Have you ever stood beside the grave of someone you loved, whispering words you thought would comfort them, only to realize later that perhaps heaven did not hear those words in the way you hoped? Most of us have done this without even thinking about it. We speak from love, from grief, from longing, and from the deep ache of a heart that does not know how to let go. And yet there are certain words that may sound gentle to us but may echo with a weight that reaches far beyond this life. They are not words that lift a soul upward. Instead, they may hold that soul back, keeping it bound to the sorrow we refuse to surrender. Centuries ago, Saint Faustina experienced a quiet moment that forever changed the way she prayed for those who had died. It was not dramatic. It was not filled with visions of fire, thunder, or terrifying signs from heaven. It was simple, almost hidden, yet it carried a warning that almost no one speaks about today. She came to understand that there are 6 things, 6 sentences, that we should never say to a departed soul. They sound comforting, they sound familiar, but they may delay the mercy that every soul longs to receive. And the most astonishing thing is this: almost every one of us has probably said at least one of them. In this video, we will walk through each of these 6 mistakes, one by one. And when we reach the final one, you will hear the most dangerous phrase of all, a sentence that nearly every believer has repeated, sometimes even within the walls of the church. But first, I invite you to take a small moment right now and join me in one simple act of mercy. Gently type in the comments, "Lord, have mercy." It is such a small prayer, but it carries great power. It is a flame offered for someone who may still be waiting. And if you have not already done so, please subscribe to our channel, Living Catholic Faith Every Day, where eternal truth meets the deepest cry of the human soul. It happened in silence. There was no thunder, no voice from the clouds, and no frightening vision. One night, while Saint Faustina was lying in her room, a soul appeared beside her bed. Pale, silent, and marked by sorrow in its eyes, the soul simply stood there without saying a word. In diary entry number 20, she recorded that moment. "A soul came to me. It stood beside my bed without speaking, and it looked at me with sadness in its eyes." Immediately she understood that this was not a dream, and it was not a product of imagination. It was a soul from purgatory, not seeking comfort, not seeking recognition, but silently begging for one thing alone: prayer. That night became a turning point for her. From that moment on, she understood something essential. The departed do not need assumptions, speeches, or words that comfort us more than they help them. What they need is intercession. They need sacrifices, whispered prayers, and acts of mercy offered into eternity. Every careless word spoken about the dead carries spiritual weight. Because of this, Saint Faustina became determined to speak with caution, holiness, and deep love whenever she spoke of departed souls. And this brings us to the first mistake that so many people make, even with good intentions. It sounds like this: "I cannot live without him. My life ended when she died." These are not just words. They are the cry of a heart torn open by love and grief. And yet Saint Faustina would gently warn us that when sorrow becomes despair, it can create something we never intended. It can hold a soul back, preventing that soul from moving freely toward the light. In diary entry number 315, she wrote that when she entered the chapel, a deep sadness flooded her soul. Then she heard these words: "Do not block the light. Let them go. Your sorrow is binding them." Think about that carefully. Purgatory is not cruelty. It is mercy. It is purification. It is the journey of a soul moving toward God. But mercy also calls for our cooperation. If our grieving overwhelms our faith, and if our mourning chains us to despair, we may unknowingly weigh down the very souls we love. Imagine a soul longing to rise, longing to see the face of God, yet hearing our cries pulling it back into the darkness. "Stay here. Stay with me. Do not leave me alone in this pain." That is not what they need. They are pleading for something different. They are saying, "Pray for me so I may enter the light." Even our prayers can become distorted by grief. Instead of begging, "Lord, bring them back to me," we should tremble and whisper, "Lord, bring them fully home to you." To say, "I cannot live without them," does not make us weak. It makes us human. But if we remain trapped there, and if we allow our identity to freeze inside despair, we risk becoming the very chain that binds them. True love does not say, "Do not go." True love says, "I will meet you there." Every rosary, every mass, and every whispered act of trust becomes a bridge that carries their soul more fully into the arms of God. So when the grief rises again, try saying these words instead. "Lord, I miss them deeply, but I trust you more than I trust my pain." That is holy mourning. That is redemptive sorrow. And that is the second mistake often begins innocently. It sounds like faith. It even appears to have the shape of devotion. We whisper, "If he is in heaven, he will help me get that job." Or we say, "If my mother is with God, I know she will make this exam go well for me." At first, this seems harmless, perhaps even hopeful. But Saint Faustina would warn us that when we turn our loved ones into private saints for our own benefit, we begin to treat them as though they exist only to grant us favors. And here we stand on the thin line between prayer and superstition. In diary entries 2 and 74, she wrote striking words: "Do not seek signs. Do not bargain. Let prayer be love, not currency." She understood that yes, in His mercy God may allow souls who are already in heaven to intercede for us. Their love, purified and perfected, can truly work in mysterious ways for our good. But that belongs to God's decision, not to our demand. If we assume or expect that the departed are always available to solve our problems, then we are no longer loving them rightly. We are using them, and that is where the danger begins. What if the soul we are calling upon is not yet in heaven? What if that soul is still in purgatory, still longing, still being purified, still waiting for mercy? Instead of helping us, that soul may be desperately waiting for our prayers, our sacrifices, and our offerings. When we say, "Grandmother will take care of this for me," that soul may be whispering back, "Do not ask me to help you. Please pray for me." This is the test of real faith. Will we treat the dead like spiritual vending machines expecting a blessing after saying one Hail Mary? Or will we love them as Christ teaches us to love through sacrifice, intercession, and trust? Some people even fall into the habit of replacing true faith with this kind of superstition. They do not attend Mass. They do not pray regularly. But when life becomes difficult, they suddenly call upon Uncle Joe or Aunt Mary, hoping they are somewhere above, pulling strings on their behalf. That is not devotion. That is misplaced desperation. Saint Faustina reminds us clearly that we do not use the dead. We pray for them. We remember them not as tools for our comfort, but as souls who are either glorified in heaven or still waiting for mercy. And if they are already in heaven, then we do not need to bargain with them. Their love perfected in God already intercedes for us in ways deeper and more powerful than anything we can demand. So the next time you feel tempted to ask for a favor in that way, try a different prayer. Say, "Lord, if they are already with you, I thank you. But if they are still waiting, may this offering become joy for them." That is not bargaining. That is love. That is the kind of prayer heaven listens to. The third mistake is something many people fall into without realizing it. It begins with something sacred, but little by little it can become shallow. It sounds like this: "I just want everyone to know how much I am suffering." Grief is sacred. Grief is the language of love, wounded by absence. But in today's world, even grief can be displayed not for the soul who has departed, but for the eyes of those watching us. We share photographs. We write long posts online. We carefully arrange our words so the world can see how deeply we are hurting. And yes, sometimes that can be beautiful. Memories deserve to be told, and love deserves to be honored. But Saint Faustina gives a quiet warning. In diary, entry number 421, she wrote, "The world may not see my pain, but heaven sees it, and heaven alone is enough." Her meaning is very clear. When mourning becomes more about ourselves than about the soul who has departed, something sacred is lost along the way. There is a kind of grief that becomes louder the more it is expressed, not because it is seeking healing, but because it is seeking recognition. And while it is true that sharing our pain with others can bring healing, and while friends and family can walk with us through the valley of tears, we still need to ask ourselves honestly, am I mourning for their soul or am I performing for the world? Because here is the truth. True grief is not a performance. True grief is a prayer. Prayers whispered in silence, tears hidden in the pews of a church, candles lit in a quiet chapel, and rosaries prayed alone at night often echo more powerfully in heaven than 1,000 public posts. The soul we love does not need a monument on Instagram. They need a mass offered for them. They need a rosary prayed for them. They need their name quietly spoken before the altar of God. Saint Faustina reminds us that heaven sees what the world overlooks and every hidden sacrifice is heard. So the question is not, have I honored them publicly enough? The real question is, have I prayed for them enough in silence? God does not need hashtags. He hears the heart. And the souls we love are not counting captions or measuring the beauty of our public words. They are waiting for our intercession. So the next time you feel the urge to display your pain for the entire world to see, pause for a moment. Light a candle. Whisper a prayer. Offer a rosary in the quiet of your room. Because in the end, heaven does not scroll. Heaven listens. And the soul you love will be lifted not by your display, but by your devotion. The fourth mistake is more hidden. We rarely say it out loud, but deep inside we may feel it. He does not deserve my prayers. It may be a father who abandoned his family. It may be a relative who left behind deep wounds. It may be someone who died before reconciliation could ever happen. The wounds they left behind may still feel fresh. And the thought of praying for them may feel almost like betraying yourself. So we tell ourselves, he chose his path. I owe him nothing. But Saint Faustina would whisper something different. In diary entry number 1181, she recorded the words, Jesus spoke to her. The greater the sinner, the greater the right he has to my mercy. That mercy does not end when death comes. And our compassion should not end there either. Because the very soul that once caused pain may now be suffering in silence. Unable to apologize, unable to explain, unable to repair what was broken, yet desperately needing one thing, our prayer. When we say, I refuse to pray for them, we are not only preventing healing, we may also be closing a door that God never asked us to close. Forgiveness after death does not mean erasing the past. It does not mean pretending the pain never happened. It means refusing to let bitterness have the final word. The soul that wounded you may now be waiting in purgatory, longing for a single prayer, perhaps your prayer to lift them closer to mercy. Saint Faustina herself experienced this mystery. In her diary, she described how the soul she most disliked came to her. She wrote, "The soul I hated most came to me. I prayed in tears, and I knew that God accepted it." That is mercy. It is not easy. It is not cheap, but it is holy. It transforms even our pain into grace. So, if someone comes to your mind right now, someone who hurt you deeply, someone who left behind a trail of brokenness, listen to this invitation. You may not understand everything that happened, but you can still say, Lord, I do not understand, but if they still need grace, let it come through me. That is not weakness. That is strength. That is not betrayal. That is freedom. And one day in the mystery of eternity, you may meet that soul again, not as the person who once wounded you, but as someone redeemed with tears in their eyes and gratitude on their lips. Because your act of mercy, your decision to forgive through prayer, may have become the bridge that brought them home. The fifth mistake sounds reasonable, almost logical. It whispers, "It has been too long. My prayers probably do not matter anymore." Perhaps your loved one died 10 years ago, 20 years ago, or even longer. And somewhere deep in your soul, you may have convinced yourself that if they needed help, the door of mercy must have closed long ago. But Saint Faustina discovered something astonishing. Time in the hands of God does not work the way time works for us. In her diary, she wrote that God sees every moment at once. He receives prayers not only for what is happening now, but also for what has already passed. Think about that. For the eternal God, your prayer today can be applied to the very moment someone died, even if that moment happened decades ago. This is not fantasy. This is mercy. This is the eternal heart of God who exists beyond every clock and every calendar. Jesus himself explained this mystery to Saint Faustina. He told her, "When a soul prays for the dying, I stand beside their bed, not as a judge, but as a savior." And if God can do this in the present moment, standing beside the dying through a prayer offered from far away, then how much more can he work through a prayer, whispered many years later, for someone who has already died? This changes everything. It means it is never too late to pray. It is never too late to light a candle. It is never too late to offer a rosary. Even if the whole world has forgotten them, even if no one speaks their name anymore, your prayer still matters. The offering you make can still reach them. One day when you stand in heaven, a soul may come near you. It may be a distant relative, a neighbor, or even a stranger. With eyes filled with light, that soul may say, "It was you. The prayer you offered years after my death was the moment I was set free." So do not let the years silence your mercy. God never forgets, and his mercy never expires. The soul you are thinking of right now may be someone who died long ago yet still waits for a prayer from your lips. Say their name today. Whisper a Hail Mary. Offer a Mass in their memory, because with God what feels too late to us can still arrive at the perfect time. The sixth and final mistake may be the most dangerous precisely because it sounds so holy and so comforting. We hear it at funerals. We say it to comfort others. We whisper it to ourselves in the darkness. He is already in heaven. She is at peace now. These words come naturally, and they often come from love and hope. But Saint Faustina would urge us to be careful, because this simple assumption, when spoken too quickly, can do more harm than we realize. In her diary, she tells of a soul that appeared to her in silence, begging for prayers that had stopped. Why had those prayers stopped? Because everyone believed the soul no longer needed them. Friends, family, and even the church community had assumed that the person was already in eternal joy. And in that certainty, the prayers ended. But the soul was still in purgatory, waiting, longing, and forgotten. That is what makes this mistake so heartbreaking. It does not come from malice. It comes from misplaced certainty. We hope our loved ones are in heaven. We trust in the mercy of God. But hope and trust are not the same as certainty. And when we stop praying because we think prayer is no longer necessary, that silence can become a second death. Saint Faustina warned, never stop praying for a soul simply because you believe they no longer need help. That is the mistake of many. These words strike deeply because they reveal a hidden truth. Love does not assume. Love continues. True love keeps praying, even when we believe God has already acted. Because in his eyes, prayer is never wasted. So what should we say instead? Not they are certainly in heaven, but rather, Lord, if they are still on the way, receive this prayer as a gift for their journey. That is faith. That is mercy. That is the prayer every soul longs to hear. Because in eternity, there are no clocks, no deadlines, and no limits. But there are voices, and your voice lifted in prayer still echoes, still heals, and still reaches them. The very soul you believe is already resting may be the soul waiting for you to whisper their name one more time. Now you have heard them, the 6 small sentences, each spoken with love, yet each capable of slowing the peace that a soul may be longing for. Perhaps you have said one of them. Perhaps you have said all 6. But now something has changed. You know. And to know means you now have the power to do what so many people never do. To love beyond memory. To intercede beyond sorrow. To act beyond death. What the souls need most from us is not praise. It is not poetry. It is not a beautiful message written on the fading walls of social media. They need prayer. They need candles lit in silence. They need rosaries whispered when no one else is listening. They need their names lifted up at the altar. Long after the funeral flowers have withered and the crowd has gone home, the soul may still be waiting for love in the form of prayer. Saint Faustina understood this truth with burning clarity. In diary entry number 873, she wrote, The greatest help for the souls is the offering of the Holy Mass. Nothing can compare with it. That means even the smallest sacrifice you make when united with Christ on the altar may become the final sound that breaks the chains of a suffering soul. So today you have a choice. Pray for the forgotten, forgive the undeserving, offer even one sigh of love for someone still waiting in the fire of mercy. Because your silence when offered as prayer may become the loudest cry that heaven hears. And your faith clothed in intercession may become the gift that sets a soul free. If this message has touched your heart, I invite you to take one simple step. Write in the comments below the name of one person you are praying for today. No explanation is needed, just one name whispered into eternity. And do not forget to subscribe to our channel, Living Catholic Faith Every Day, where every story, every teaching, and every prayer becomes a small light in the darkness. A light that guides the souls we love toward their eternal home.